Hi-ho everyone, it's not too early in the morning. We're setting off just before 8. We're departing our lovely berth in Campbelltown and we're heading off towards Tarbert because we want to get a little bit further up north. And yes, I'm going to use a bow thruster to make this turn because I might as well. I could go into the middle if I wanted and do my forward reverse, forward reverse, forward reverse, but it's just as easy to touch that button a couple of times and I'm round and gone. If you've noticed, Lisa's still got her PJs on. And I know why she's still got her PJs on with her trainers. It's because she's thinking, when he gets out the dock, I'm going back to bed. So she very kindly does me the favour of bringing the fenders in before she deserts me. She gets the ropes in and helps me tidy up. And if you look, it looks a lovely morning. There's sunshine on what I'd call a very, very flat water, and that looks a lovely sky up there if it stays like that. But we have been promised that there'll be a little bit of wind outside. Here's two forecasts. On the left we've got predict wind and we're supposed to be sailing up here, and they've got an average speed of 20 knots. And on the right it's windy and theirs is a bit less than 20, I think they're actually saying, because you need a little bit of red to get in it to the 20 knots according to the scale at the bottom. But they're both fairly much about the same, saying we get about 20 knots. And the actual forecast turns round and says that we'll get about 3 to 5, occasionally 6. So they're all fairly similar. So we look back and we say goodbye to Campbelltown, where we've had a pleasant stay, but our adventure must continue and to new grounds we must go. So we're heading a little bit further up north to Tarbert. Well, within minutes we've got the engine off and we've got the sail up, just the foresail, because the wind's got us running really. And if I have the main out when I'm running and I'm not sure how the wind's going to come off the mountains, it'll drive me mad, as it wants to go from port to starboard and from starboard to port and port to starboard. So it's easier just to run if you're not sure which way the wind's going to come and get you while you're running, just to run under the Genoa alone. Looks like some fishermen coming back after a very hard night's work, no doubt. Incidentally, the facilities are good in Campbelltown and the electric's included. It's £15 a night up to about 25 foot. It's £20 a night up to about 30 foot. It's £25 a night up to about 35 foot, and so on. Okay, now we've departed Campbelltown Lock and we're now into Kilbrannan Sound, and we'll run the sound all the way up to a junction of waters, as I see it, called Inchmarnock Waters. I've just had to put that bungee round the fruit bag there and the veg bag because they were banging away, and the last time it did that I didn't understand where the pureed banana was coming from on the sink until I realised it had been battered to death in the bag. Everything seems to be wobbling or knocking or making a noise because the boat's rolling a little bit. It's not very smooth out here because one of the things I didn't take into consideration was the tide's coming against me, so we're running wind over tide, so we've got a little bit of a ripple to fall over, and everything that can make a noise seems to be making a noise, so I'm running around the boat shutting things up. Our progress is starting off a little bit slow because I never counted for the half a knot, only because people said you don't have to, but we're doing 3.8 through the water in about 14 knots of running wind. There's two boats there catching me up motoring along, and they seem to be going quite quick. Them two guys there, I don't know where they've come from. Well, it must have been a distance away or around the mull at least. The waters are slight at the moment, but it could get a little bit bumpier, I suppose, if we get a little bit more wind as we were promised, especially if we get up to the 6. Now the tide's against me more or less all day. It was supposed to be half a knot, well, it is half a knot, not supposed to be half a knot. There's half a knot of tide against me. So I'll have to take that into my calculations when I'm working out how long it's going to take me. First of all, I thought 6 hours, but maybe 7 now. Now that's not fair. These guys have got dolphins in front of their boats. I can see both of them have got dolphins bounding round, and I haven't seen a dolphin all trip. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm starting to develop a new theory. Well, these guys give me a nice big wave as they mosey on by, but shortly after passing me they decided it'd be a better idea to put the genoas out, so they stuffed the genoas out and disappeared into the distance. And there they go, goose winged away. Well, I'm not going to bother sticking my main up. I'm quite happy with the pace I'm making, and I don't want the aggro of jibing at all because I'm on a chilled passage, and Lisa's disappeared as we knew she would, and she's fast asleep, so I'm up here on my own most of the time anyway, just looking for a dolphin to come and say hello, and they're not bothering me at all. They disappeared with those other two boats. I got a little bit more wind at one point and picked a slightly better line and started catching these two guys up for a little bit, but then that didn't work. They got the same sort of extra breeze that I was getting and they were off again, and that were definitely the last time I were going to see them. We're getting a couple more knots of wind now, but it's also making a little bit more of a lump because of the wind over tide, but it's very tenable. It's not bad at all, and it's very enjoyable, peaceful and quiet. Swallows just slipping along almost silently in the water, as you can hear or not hear, with that silent transom making no noise whatsoever. I love the way she slips out the water. Mind you, it's a bit noisier at the bow, I'm quite sure. Let's go and have a look. Yeah, just as I expect, while she's having a nice little run, she's pushing a little wave in front of herself and getting on with the job. But you can see how much I'm rolling now. I'm not sure if I've made a good decision or not, leaving the main away now, but still and all, well, I got enough power, so I don't need it anyway, and I can't be bothered with it, to tell you the truth. I want it to be a very relaxing passage. I want to enjoy a bit of the scenery and see a bit of my sights around me, because there's a lot of lovely land about. It's like sailing up a valley. Statistics are fine. We're doing near the 5 knots over the ground, and don't forget we're pushing half a knot a tide. We're doing just under 5 through the water, or so that says, but that must be telling a lie if we're doing faster over the ground against the tide. And now we've got 15 knots of wind plus our 5 knots. We've got 20 knots of wind to play with. So 20 knots of wind is pushing us a little bit stronger through the water. And it seems to be building up steadily as the morning goes. So we seem to be getting a bit more power and a bit more speed continuously, which is really nice. There's a very good possibility then that we will do it in about 7 hours, which won't be bad at all. At this point that I'm at now in the Kilbrannan Sound, Arran and Carradale Point squash it a little bit, and it can make an area of overfalls, it says on the chart. So my plan is, because I'm about by the point now, because just over the way in front of me there's a red can which marks it there. Well, it doesn't mark the point obviously, but it's in the point, so that's how I know where I am. Well, it feels nice and fresh still here. We're doing a decent turn through the water now, 4.6ish. We've still got about the 20 knots in total behind us, but we're doing quite well over the ground as well. There's our 16 knots plus what we're doing over the ground, near 5 knots, so 5 plus 15, 5 plus 16, 21, 22 knots of wind. And of course, because it's wind over tide, we're now making a little bumpy wave to ride over as well. And that's the bit that's going to rock the boat now. Mind you, that rocking the boat will keep Lisa fast asleep, I'm sure. But Swallow seems to be slipping along lovely and having a nice day at play, and I've got a big grin on my face, and that's all that matters. The starboard bow wave, the port bow wave. Hey, the port bow wave looks a little bit more impressive, but that's bearing the load. Oh, I'm going to get overhauled again by another big boat with 2 sails up. Here's me chart work. 10:57, going through the narrow bit, and of course the narrow bit makes the water a little bit more bumpy. Now, he's not bothered about it at all. He's just flying along. Well, with all these boats passing me, and I'm sure they would anyway, I'm starting to feel a little bit like the lazy sailor who couldn't be bothered putting his main up. But I thought it was just a good call that I was leaving it down for. But then as I'm watching everybody pass me, I'm wondering whether I made a mistake. Is that rain coming up behind us? Oh dear. Hey, where's all our blue skies gone? Everything's turned grey, the whole picture. Except for the blue on top of the fender, you think you'd be watching in black and white. If you ever stare at a following sea, it's almost hypnotic. It sort of draws you in. You end up just watching it rolling towards the boat and then slipping underneath. And it rolls towards the boat and then it slips underneath. And for every one that slips underneath, there's another one waiting to slip underneath. If you go inside though, it's a different world. You're sort of cut off from the noises outside and the feeling of wind and what have you. And like somebody else turned round and said, I've got 3 big TV screens in front of me. I have. But the nicest one's just outside where the sound's turned on. I just found a little bit of smoother water that doesn't rock the boat very much. It's on the starboard side, quite close in to Aaron. Maybe Lisa will wake up now that the boat stopped rocking. Hey, look at that. We're nearly doing 5 knots through the water. That isn't bad, is it? On just one sail with only 22 knots of wind, eh? Swallow's nearly a sailing boat. Ain't that a pretty backdrop though? It is pretty good, isn't it? This has been the smoothest bit of water all the way along. The wind's not actually dropping much. It's still blowing about the same, about 22 knots. But the water's just dropped right down, so we must be out of the current here for it to fall quite of a slight like this. And the boat's gone really quiet as it slips through because the water's quite flat, as you can hear, or not hear. Very silent. And then this chap passes. And he gives me a beep with his horn. I bet you he has difficulty keeping the tea in the cup. Well, 5.8, 5.9, 6.1. I can say that's an average of 6 knots over the ground now. Now we are coming towards the end of tide and we still got the same wind, but we've actually picked up a little bit of a pace as well. So we're doing well at 6 knots over the ground. I don't think we've got nothing to fight us now. I think that's the end of the tide there. But when we get around the corner, we'll be fighting tide again. Now that's the most northern point of Arran, and that little space there is called Loch Ranza. It's an anchorage and we were thinking about going there. But because of the weather being a bit blowy, we've decided to give it a miss and just carry on. Now this is the corner I'm talking about, just ahead of us there on the port. It's called Skipness Point. And when we turn that corner, we'll enter Inchmanoch water, and that's being fed from Loch Fyne. So we'll be punching tide all over again. Well, we've made good time up to here, funny enough, which has been really good. And we've got about 10 miles to run. So as long as the wind keeps up and the rain keeps off, we'll get there in a couple of hours. She is going well though. She's been relentless all the way. I know she only had the one sail up, but she's not giving up and she's pushing on. But it's a shame that we've got no blue skies. There's hardly any colour whatsoever in these pictures, and the only way I can think to put a bit of colour in so you know your telly's not broke is this. Uh-oh, cable ferry. It's okay, we'll miss him. There he is. We've well cleared him, so we don't have to worry about him. They're one of the things I do worry about though. Chain ferries and cable ferries, and the ones that can't divert from their course or their speed. Leaves it up to us to deal with it, doesn't it? That's a clearer picture than the one I showed you before, and that's a clearer picture at the end of Arran than the one I showed you before. And coming up on my port side now is Skipness Point. That's basically my last corner to turn, or the last change of course, before we get to Tarbert Loch. One thing that surprised me a lot is you can be fairly close to the banks enough to see the trees and the leaves on the trees, but also you're in very, very deep water, you know, 80, 100 metres, and you're not far from the bank. As we round this corner, The wind seems to have died down a little bit. We're still getting there though. We're still slipping along nicely. It's just gone a little bit more peaceful. It was getting a little bit more breezy a couple of minutes ago. So we'll just have to bob along until we get our wind back. Well, it's come back and I've had to put a couple of rolls in the Genoa as we're screaming along, and there's a bit more wind than there was before. It must have saved it up so it could give us an extra push. Just look at the power in Swallow's bow, pushing it through that water. To me it's almost like a powerboat. To push all these tons along at that rate is really, really good, and you can feel the immense power when it shoves its way in. God only knows how excited I'd be if I ever found myself on a racing boat screaming along when it were planing, because if Swallow could get out the water and plane now, she would. She tries to get up and then rests herself back down again, but you can feel her trying to have a go. Well, fortunately, she's designed never to plane. She's designed always to stay in the water, so it doesn't matter how hard it blows, she'd just dig a bigger hole to sit in. And 5 or nearly 6 knots, that's not bad through the water for me. Come on girl, you can do it, let's see 6. Oh, there we go, we've seen 6. Swallow's doing 6 knots through the water, and that's real speed. And she's maintaining it, that's not bad, and that's going to make someone very happy. Mind you, it is taking gusts close on 30 to produce it, but then I have got a bit of a rolled up small sail on the front and we are running, which is not the favourite position for speed, is it? Not for a boat that's not a plane, and all it isn't anyway. I could almost break into song, she's going that well, but I'll save you that pain and I'll keep it to myself and I'll just hum in my head. Oh, and I've got a little surprise for you. Hey, 6 knots over the ground against half a knot of tide, and did you see that? Lisa was out of bed, she was on the helm. There's quite a few sailing boats out. Most of them are on the other side over there. I don't know if you can see any of them. Most of them are motoring, but there is a few with sails up as well. The headland ahead of us just there, that's the way into Tarbert, Loch Tarbert. So we'll be there within a couple of seconds at this rate. It won't take us long now. There's another boat coming across our bows at the moment who's got his sails down, and I'm not sure whether who's going to have to give way to who when we get there. We're going to get our sails down now anyway in order so that we can get in. So we're right by the loch entrance now, and it started drizzling a little bit. There's the other boat there. I think he'll get in before us. He were bouncing a little bit a second ago, so there's some funny areas on this water. It started raining now, which is typical. We've got to be outside for getting in, and you can see how thick the rain is in the air there because vision's disappearing, visibility's fallen down to half a mile or so. Well, as soon as we get in the shelter of the hills and out the main stream of water, the water falls flat, the wind drops down, and we're just getting the fine rain in our eyes now. So I had to take my glasses off because they were getting soaking wet. But the camera lens is lucky at the moment because what wind there is behind us is keeping itself off the camera lens. The first thing you need to locate on the way in is that buoy ahead of us there. It's a port hand buoy. Obviously being a port hand buoy, you're going to put them to port, so it looks like the way in is on the right of the island, but it's on the left of the island. So you can just see the green coming into view now there. So obviously round the red and turn to port, and then round the starboard green and turn back to starboard. This gives you plenty of time in sheltered waters to sort your ropes out and your fenders out. Now as we're not sure which side we're going in, Lisa's fendering up both sides for us. We prefer most of the time to go port side too. So given the choice, that's what we'll do, we'll go port side too, but otherwise we'll have to go starboard side too. And as you can see now, we've gone into the rain a little bit, and it's all over the camera lens, and I've had to put my hood up. Well, the first pontoon you'll come to will be A-leg, and A-leg is normally the visitor's pontoon. There's another starboard hand buoy coming up just here for you to pass, and then you can stay within the next starboard hand buoy all the way to A-leg without any difficulties whatsoever. So we've spotted the gap right at the end, and we're going to go right at the end to get out of the wind. So we're all set up for port hand. Lisa set the line up on starboard and she's just swapping it over to port. I don't know whether that's an omen or not. You'll see why I say I don't know whether it's an omen or not in a second, because we come in like you should do. We line the boat up and everything's going lovely and well until we get to here. Conditions feel fine at this moment and it's just coming in lovely. And I tell Lisa not to step off until she's 100%, and I normally give her a nod to turn around and say when to go. She's waiting for me to say, but I don't feel something's right. There's a gust of wind and it hits us now, and it hits us hard. And watch it push the boat away, this gust of wind. That's how quick it pushes the boat away. So Lisa's coming back aboard, and we're going to go and have another go if I can get out of here before we get to the other pontoon. I've even had to give the bow thruster a blow or two to stop us drifting all the way onto the other pontoon on the other side. Now, we could have stopped on the other pontoon if we wanted to, because we were fended up on that side, but I'd rather do it in my control than an accident. So I've decided to come back into clear water again, and what we'll do is we'll switch the lines back over from, they were originally on starboard and then we put them on port. And then now we're going to stick them back on starboard and come in and pick up on starboard side, because the wind's going to stick us on that side easy anyway. And as I don't know the marina for currents and things like that, and I've just found out there's gusts blowing me that way, then I'm going to have to go with the gusts rather than go against them. And that's why I said I think it was a bit of an omen changing my mind from going from one side to the other side, because we ended up going back to the original side now. Anyway, get yourself into clear water is always a good bit of advice. Sort yourself out while you've got plenty of space around you, and then you can go back and do it all again properly. Let's have another go then. Let's get these lines swapped over and bring ourselves back round. I'm going out here to give myself a better angle to come in, and also the reason that I want to come in from a further angle is to see if there's any drift going anywhere. You get more of a feel for it if you're coming for a longer line. There you go. We're ashore. It's always a little bit harder to get the boat moored safely when there's wind gusting, and the wind's gusting quite hard in different patches, although it doesn't seem to show on the water very much. You're seeing the speed that the boat moved. This is me just having a quick pan round the marina to show you what it looks like when you're in. A couple of hours later though, but it's still a grey sky. The wind's still blowing. Plenty of rain up there, but it's stopped raining at the moment. But at least we're here in Tarbert, where we can enjoy ourselves for the next few days. And we had a good ride coming as well. Or Lisa had a good sleep and I had a good sail. So next time, bon voyage!